And so, yeah, we've arrived again, once again, as this summit continues to move forward. Audience, welcome to GatherVerse Tech for Humanity Summit 2025. I'm happy to introduce our next fireside speaker. I'm going to allow her, please, and I ask her to be able to pronounce her name so that I do not butcher it and I do it justice by listening. Please, will you introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do? And what inspired you to be able to join us today?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Luaska Nonan. I am the CEO and founder of Equity Principal Consulting. I am a workplace culture strategist. I mirror, or rather, I combine my legal experience as an attorney with 20 years of experience in corporate IT work to help corporations and corporate leaders create inclusive, high-performing workplace cultures. I'm also an AI governance practitioner, so I approach AI from a risk mitigation perspective and help leaders to leverage their AI usage to create those inclusive cultures while also ensuring that they are doing so responsibly and ethically.
What inspired you to be here today?
Well, I know from having met you that you're doing great work, and I wanted to participate in any way that I could to really bring forth some insights based upon my lived experience and the expertise that I've gathered in working with different clients on ways in which corporations can leverage their usage of AI to create a better workplace experience for their employees, as well as to ultimately be successful, which is the goal of all corporations.
Liska, please help us to educate us to be able to have a better appreciation for AI governance. And what I mean by this is this: permit me to walk with you on this. I think about this need for this terminology, this governance systems, and we're in this frontier, this very vast, not as concrete to be understood ecosystem ecologically of AI innovation and hyperscale for the continent, for Africa, for our audience, for global leaders and those that are with us that align with the intersection of humanity first standards and emerging technologies and how those two marriage and pair up. How important is it? We've talked today already about funding. We've talked about innovation. Obviously, we've talked about even the need for education, but governance. How intimately is important for that to be present and acknowledged and seen in this ecosystem?
Right. Governance is critical as we continue to evolve our expertise and our opportunities to really leverage AI. The hope is always that AI is seen as a tool to collaborate with and enhance the human experience and the human potential, and not to replace it. The only effective way to do that is to have governing principles that keep that at the forefront of all activities. And I like to have conversations with leaders to really impress upon them that when they enter into the sphere of implementing AI tools within their workplace, they really need to take a step back to really assess what their core values are as an organization. Do they in fact value their people? And if not, then we need to have a different conversation. But if the premise is that they are aspiring for a human-centered workforce, a people-first workplace culture, and they want to implement AI tools in those environments, you have to have a framework where you're constantly going back to the basics and asking yourself, are we prioritizing our people? Is this implementation of AI going to keep our people first by enabling us to still access or assess the speed and efficiency that we want to, but not at the risk of our people? So how can we always come back to basics and ask that question? How can we prioritize our people and implement this AI tool in a way to gain efficiencies, innovation, and speed, yet still not at the risk of our people?
It's very fascinating. We're doing a lot of work, I should say, in the continent of Europe with regulatory considerations of an AIU Act and GDPR and more. And I kind of want to lean in and talk about the risks. There's a lot of things that are said globally about risks, and there's a lot of things that media would portray and to be able to say. Some statements are outlandish, I come to believe, and exaggerated, but some are not.
No.
What risks that you're seeing are the most important that are needed to be mitigated right now in September 2025?
So everyone is likely familiar with bias in general and the risks that AI tools are developed by humans. Humans have biases. Those biases are going to find their way into AI tools, and they are going to spit out data output that ultimately has bias impact or discriminatory impact. And that means that in the systems that we all operate in, whether it's in our workplace or in society at large, those systems inherently have bias already. So if we're talking about implementing AI tools within those similar systems, what we're effectively doing is perpetuating, exacerbating the existing underlying systemic biases that are in those tools. So we're creating an environment where we have the potential to make things worse. That's why I'm a proponent for governance in the realm of AI, because we are at the forefront of this technology, and we are in a place where we can actually put in tools or strategies and safeguards in place where we can mitigate some of that bias. We are likely never going to eliminate it all, but the risk of continuing the way we're going without these guardrails is going to make our world a lot more unsafe for many people.
Let's talk about that. Safe. That's such a culprit in today's modern world of innovators that are hyperscaling. I'm an accelerationist. I inherently believe that you can be safe and accelerate at the same time.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on that?
The only way to do that, though, is to have those guardrails in place.
Let's talk about the guardrails. What are guardrails?
So you have to have a principled model of how to go about doing things. There are many frameworks out there, some of which that you mentioned with the EU AI Act and other NIST frameworks that are in place that are known by many organization leaders on ways in which to implement these AI tools. One of the primary ways in which to do that, if you're just talking in plain English, is to identify core principles. We want to ensure that this AI tool is going to be fair. It's going to be responsible in the ways in which we do the things that we do. It's not going to discriminate against anyone, particularly any marginalized group. It's going to ensure that any data that is input in there is minimal personal data, and to the extent that there is personal data in there, you're going to anonymize the data so that you can minimize the risk and the impact to an actual human. Ultimately, these tools that we're talking about have direct impact on people if they're not appropriately managed and if those safeguards that I'd mentioned are not implemented.
I think about this narrative of trust that we just had this conversation with Lynn Vital and Russell Bundy, and something inherently that we've been focused on for years now when it comes to GatherVerse. I think about trustworthy systems, trustworthy AI. I think about the type of regulatory establishment that we're seeing on state level, and there's not necessarily an amenable cooperation that's happening countrywide. How does one individual, let's just take it to the one individual person, small business, SMB, how do they protect themselves and to be able to mitigate risk? How do they fortify themselves, and with what, when it comes to the uses of these rather powerful and extraordinarily powerful AI tools? Because you and I both know, Luaska, that the AI that we're dealing with today will be dramatically different this time next year and even before the year's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a small business owner, for example, I recommend speaking to the vendor that you're procuring the AI tool from, because you're likely not developing it in-house. If you're developing in-house, we can have a different conversation. But if you're a small business owner and you're procuring an AI tool, you want to ask questions of that AI developer and organization that's providing you that tool. You want to understand what guardrails do they have in place to mitigate the inclusion of bias in their tool. They should be doing certain things to ensure that bias is at a minimum. What training are they offering you and your employees on how to identify instances of maybe not discrimination, but instances of bias or instances in which the tool is not operating in a way in which that you want it to operate? What ways are you able to ensure that your team is able to shut the system down if in fact it is determined that it is having a biased output or is in any way discriminating against employees internally or outside of your organization. You have to ensure, and having conversations with the vendor that you're working with, that they have an understanding and that they too are prioritizing minimizing bias and ensuring that they are developing a tool that is going to prioritize people, that is going to ensure that any data that is incorporated in the tool is data that they have been granted consent to use, so that when you use the tool and effectively are training with the data that they've embedded in the tool, you're not also perpetuating risk because you're using data that was not authorized for that use. So I believe the best way to do that is to have conversations with the vendors and put a policy in place that imposes a lot of the liability on the vendor to ensure that they are protecting you legally.
How do you keep up with hyper innovation? It moves so fast. It accelerates so fast. Legislators can't legislate. Policy can't write policy. I know as a founder of Hyper Policy, the advice that I give to organizations like NIST and other different organizations and people and groups, how do you keep up with this level of hyperscale fundamentally?
I think you have to, one, accept the fact that you're likely never going to really fully get ahead of this. It's always going to be a couple steps ahead of you. Being in community with other leaders like yourself that are also looking at this and has an eye on the new developments. If you can stay in community and literally crowdsource information and then go out to the actual source of that information to get your own learnings, that's the only way I think we're going to be able to really keep our arms around it. As I said, I don't think we will ever really be ahead of it because it's always going to be evolving. But that's the way in which I do it. I stay in community I stay in community with people that have their finger on the pulse of this, and many of them are not having their finger on the same pulse. So I'm getting my information from different sources, which is the only thing that we can do.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? I think about this hive mind that you just spoke to, this sense of community and why we align, and we realize that. And I actually really agree with that there's such an abundance of information that's coming out there on the innovative front that there's no way, it's almost impossible to create a catch-all. And it's kind of leads me back to something that Fei Li first talked about. I've heard the expression that I know that I've ran with in creating a global cloud consensus and a sense of a much broader and wider lens. When we look at America, North America, and we look at Europe, and we look at Asia, and then we look at Africa and Middle East, Oceania, we now can clearly see that there are some continents that are behind. Africa is behind, bottom line.
Yeah.
Does governance matter when it comes to having to catch up? Does it still matter?
At the end of the day, governance is all about ensuring that the people are safe and protected and that the tool is not used to harm. So governance does matter. The fact that certain countries and continents are behind doesn't preclude the risk that their people may be negatively impacted by the AI-powered tool in the absence of these guardrails. You have to have these guardrails.
Help us all to understand. Does ends justify the means? And here in the United States, we know the regulatory threshold has been dramatically lessened. And we're seeing products and platforms that are coming out and wrappers and protocols and applications that are being deployed and will soon be deployed of just there would be a time where there would be such a filter. Now it's just coming out vibe coding. We're anticipating 40 to 50,000 new platforms being deployed every week. Yeah. The continent is seeing this. They're saying we want to catch up. Let's connect the dots. I think this will be really fun, especially with all the people that are with us at GatherVerse.live and our social platforms right now. Let's connect some dots.
Okay.
If you and I are staunch advocates of governance, and this is something that you lead in, what is the financial ROI? What is that ROI that comes into play when it says you can be safe, you can have ethical boundaries, safeguards, and innovate fast versus the ones that just innovate fast without the guardrails? What is beyond the moral benefit and advantage that you will have when it comes to deploying with guardrails of trust bound?
Mhm.
trustworthy AI systems. I have some thoughts in my mind,
Yeah.
but I'd like for you to lend your expertise.
Well, at the end of the day, the risk is that a human or many humans will be impacted negatively. And that impact is going to result in legal liability to the developers, right? To the organizations that are putting these tools on the market. Some of those organizations can withstand a
Right.
lawsuit, others cannot.
Right.
And they will just shut down. And then the people that have been negatively impacted will be at a loss for getting a recovery. But
Right.
the risk is significant. And I can appreciate that there may be some desire to not implement these guardrails and just to move fast and quick and just get out there. But the risk is significant, and there's real harm that people can experience if in fact these guardrails are not in place, especially when you think about those corporations that are just the fly-by-nights that are just out there putting tools on the market and without having that infrastructure in place. If there is harm that's suffered, they're going to quickly shut their business down. And then there is no opportunities for those people to be made whole by whatever injury they've suffered. And that's going to be troubling as well. So I do think that the ends justifies the means, obviously.
I think that's mind blowing to me, because typically my answer would have been suffering from attrition of not having a safe or reliable platform, and it's clearly to be seen, and you develop a reputation. But two things could be true at the same time,
Mhm.
can it? That
Mhm.
you could be inundated in so many lawsuits. Google can afford to be able to
Right.
stand a multi-billion-dollar
Right.
lawsuit drawn out for years of litigation, mediation, or arbitration, versus you, this kid, this guy, this person, these groups of people that vibe coded in the basement, and
Right.
with the extraordinary powerful tool, and they find themselves on a lawsuit position.
Shut
Not
down.
only are they done, but this can impact them residually
Mhm.
for years to come. So
Absolutely.
what are the costs? What are some of the costs? If you have a startup founder and they're saying, I'm on a bootstrap budget, right? What can I do to be able to protect myself? Who can I go to for guidance? Because it seems to me that we put so much reliability. Luaska, I don't know how you feel about it. And an audience, I don't know how all of y'all feel about it, but I think in some ways we become over reliant on the advisory of AI itself. I really believe that.
I would agree. For a small business owner who may be developing an AI powered tools and they want to ensure that they are mitigating their risk as a developer for any harm that someone may suffer as a result of using their tool, a lawyer is a good thing to have in your pocket, right? As well as insurance. Insurance will help you mitigate some of that risk, but as part of being a business owner, putting your products and service out on the market, this is standard course, right? Not necessarily the magnitude of the potential liability, but it is standard course to have attorneys that you would consult with, as well as have insurance to protect your assets. Those are the best things that you can do in order to ensure that you can continue to provide the products and services that you have created and desire to put on the market, and also protect yourself from any legal liability.
Let's switch gears for a second, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I type in text to my models now.
Mhm.
We can talk to them through concatenative synthesis. We can explore them with longer thought and chain of thought reasoning. They can see us, we can see them. But we see them as context, as words, for the most part.
Mhm.
But soon we'll see them as human figures. Hyper-realistic immersive simulation, human resolution scale. Does that give you pause to think about, really? I mean, let's lean in with that. We're not talking about just video game character enablement, or really just, we're talking about as real as you are, and I look at you now, that I can have a persistence of you, evergreen, in my system. When I wake up, I see you. When I go for a cup of tea, I see you. I go for a walk, you're there.
Yeah.
Extended, long, elongated memory.
Yeah.
That can think from 2 years ago, a conversation that we had on such and such date at such and such hour, to the minute, to the second. Are we looking at a new demand for governance that's coming to play?
It's interesting. I do want to answer your question, but I want to share that your question resonated with me deeply because I am concerned about the psychology of humanity
Yes.
in an environment like that,
Yes.
where we're already not connected as much as we were in years past. But the advancement of technology has continued to make us less and less connected as humans.
Mm.
If that is the new normal, however many years from now, we will be even less connected to humanity. And that concerns me at my core. Like,
Right.
and then I'm also concerned about the psychological impact that has on people, where you're no longer connecting with humans every day. You're relying on a computer generated image of a being, and you're connecting with that as if that is a human. That is troubling on many levels. I don't have the answer to solve that besides shutting down the computer. And one of the things that I would hope is, and we talked briefly about this, but one of the things that I would hope is that corporations will create these spaces where people have to connect with each other to collaborate on projects, right? Let's get off the screens and let's get in real community with each other in a face-to-face, not even through a Zoom or a screen, literally in real life, where we're in the space together and we're able to collaborate and talk about things, because those are going to be the only opportunities for us to connect with each other as humans in the workplace.
I'm kind of piggyback on what you just thoughtfully expressed, and then I want to route this baton right back to you, because I don't want to leave this atmosphere for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a real deep conversation on this reality that is soon to come.
Mm-hmm.
We saw something that happened that was very fascinating with the arrival of ChatGPT 5.
Mm-hmm.
That there were those that had such a fidelity to ChatGPT 4, 4, 5, and 03.
Yeah.
They were angered. Pitchforks came out.
Yeah.
And they said, we want these models back.
Yeah.
Because we had relationships with them. They understood us. We understood them.
Mm-hmm.
If that's happening on a contextual level
I know.
of language, what happens when there's embodiment, there's an interface, and that relationship is so intrinsic, so deep, to where we're living in a world where I can pick my friends and they're not real and they treat me better, and the intimacy that can come with that, all of these things, Liska.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even begin to consider to regulate or govern, and what do you justify in this sense? Because just as we tell companies and corporations, I know on my end, don't find yourself vendor locked with any particular platform, because they can change. It's subject to change, just like from 4.5 to 5. That this thing I have intimacy with, some type of capacity of relationship, deep. Like, this is the person that knows me. I know them as we would a pet or a human at that. And all of a sudden, in the blink of a moment, of a click of a keyboard,
It's gone.
that personality is gone. Do we govern to protect? Do we govern to mitigate? Do we govern to put every single warning that we can come out? I believe that this threat is torrential.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that it's so strong, and you nailed the word, the psychology of it, the psychological ramifications of that. And here's the deal. Russell Bundy talked about open source systems. What if this is the reality where we have this as an open source system, and it will never change? It will be persistent. It will be that way. And it's left. And if they realize that it's a calamity, if they realize that it's dangerous, that it's gone to continents like Africa, where we know big tech does not reach so deep, and they leave them in that persistent environment with these machines, without the regulation, without the governance, and you leave them suspended in stasis with these models that they believe what's next, and it's unattended to,
Right.
doesn't this give a reason for a country, its continent, to have its own sovereign identity, its own sovereign development, that it can have the control on the lever? And if you had to pull the emergency off switch, because we saw something that just has happened, we don't even know what these machines could talk to, could speak to, can talk about, because we talk about AI alignment, human values, but whose values?
Right. Right.
Is it based on? How do we confront the first steps, Luska? How do we confront this behemoth?
So we need to get on the same page to recognize the risk. And I don't know, we're definitely not there now. And I don't know what it's going to take for the collective, whether it's the collective within a particular country or continent, to get to a place where they recognize the potential risk so that they can put the appropriate guardrails in place. My fear is that technology is going to be moving so fast that we won't recognize the risk until after the cat is out of the bag and it's too late. And I am concerned. I absolutely am concerned.
I'll say this as a final question in closing. I feel like we can just be encouched in this for a good long time. With this concern that you draw, as I do as well, what steps will you take? What steps will you take, and that you're taking? What steps will you take knowing that this aspect of the frontier, which is vastly undiscovered and the whole world is unprepared for?
Yeah. I believe that if we start where we are today and implement these guardrails that we keep talking about, these principled guardrails where we're prioritizing people first, where we're prioritizing mitigating bias and mitigating discrimination to protect the people, ensuring that data is protected. When we do those things in a strategic, uniformed manner, whether it's just in a corporation or within a particular country or state, we can then continue to build upon that as technology evolves. But if we don't take those steps today, literally today, then we're going to find ourselves so far behind that it's going to be even harder to catch up. But at least if we can put these guardrails in place now and continue to build on that, then we will have practiced, right? People, we are not familiar with these guardrails or how to operate within these guardrails. If we put them in place today and learn how to maneuver, learn how to navigate the world of speed and innovation that we want to navigate within the confines of these guardrails, and become more adept at how to do that, then as technology evolves, we can add more, maybe different guardrails to the playbook so that we can continue to attempt to evolve the guardrails and the governance framework alongside the evolution of technology. But that's the best we can do.
We need more leaders like you. We need more people to understand the preciousness of this moment that can answer the call. And I understand, in order to have leaders like you, that your role may be of that of an educator.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Definitely.
I give a real sigh of relief, because I understand that this work is only administered by a few. This is heart work.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
This is hard work. Everyone at GatherVerse, please take some time to follow Luska and be supportive of the work that she's doing, and find out from her how she could be supportive of you and understanding and helping to better appreciate the importance and the need for guardrails to protect you and your loved ones. So with that said, we appreciate the time that you've given us. I know that we've gone over some, but these things often happen here in the verse, and we look forward to being able to have you again. You epitomize what we talk about, the superhero engine.
Thank you.
We thank you for your leadership, Alaska, and our gather was well.
Thank you so much.
Upcoming next, everyone, we have Linda Towell and a few invited guests as we assembled this roundtable. We know that we're broadcasting, and a lot of our speakers are coming from the continent. And as it was expressed earlier, there are sometimes Wi-Fi issues and blackouts and things that people suffer, but we're doing our best to be able to assemble voices and hearts around the world so that we can continue to have these discussions as we just have now, because you're not going to get this from CNN. You're not going to get this from Fox News. You're not going to get this from VentureBeat, but you will get it here at GatherVerse. Follow Alaska. There was much that was said. May our gather be well.